everyone. Welcome to another episode of Surviving UX. Jessamine, how is it going? How was your holiday?
Thanks, Meg. My holiday was pretty good. We hosted my family and my husband's family, and we had a bounce house and a fire
Ooh,
pit out there. So it was cool. It was one of those things where we kind of like set everything in motion, and then I kind of stepped back and let everybody kind of do their thing. So it was kind of a hands-off hostess this time, but it was good.
nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, it's nice to have a 4-day weekend. Got to be honest. At least where I work, I got Thursday and Friday off, and man, a 4-day weekend is so much different than a 2-day weekend. You
Oh,
really can
yes.
have a full day or two to actually relax and do nothing and then a couple of other days to clean your house and do
Right.
your laundry and things
The
like that.
cleaning
So
is really hard. The cleaning is really hard. It's hard to get
yeah.
inspired to clean. Um, Question for you. When you are off of work, how long does it take you to actually like come down off of work brain and like just be on weekend brain?
A lot. It takes a
Yeah,
lot. um
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love, vacations that are like 7 to 10 days because it takes that long to really disconnect and not care, not think about work. And it's not just work, right? It's not just your paid work, it's also your unpaid work, you know
Mm-hmm.
what responsibilities and things you have to get done and bills you have to pay and things like that. And so I feel like it does take a good amount of time to kind of come down from that, from those obligations and the stressors that are associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a good number of days for sure. I mean, would be really nice to have a 4-day weekend because most, like, if that was most weekends, that'd be fantastic.
Right.
Although I guess that
At
would only
least one
leave
a
us with
month,
what, three
right?
three work days. Maybe they wouldn't want us to only work 3 days a week.
3 days a week. That's going to be
Yeah.
3 very good days. Did you get any work emails or messages or anything like that over the weekend or over the holiday?
I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I may have. But what I actually did was I remembered that I forgot to file all my expenses. And so yesterday, on my day off, I did spend a little bit of time on my work computer filing expenses,
Mm,
um, because I really just wanted to get that done. And
done.
um, I mean, I have a vested interest in getting reimbursed, of course.
Right.
um, but yeah, and I was kind of worried if I didn't do it then I wouldn't remember to do it because I haven't remembered to do it for weeks. So
Uh, I
um,
feel like that's a dangerous game that I play with myself sometimes because I'll tell myself like once I get this thing done, then I'll be able to relax. So
mhm,
let me just finish this one, report or this one fix or this one request or whatever. And then I'm like, it's late at night, the night before the holiday or whatever, Friday night. And when I feel like I should already be kind of switching gears and relaxing, I'm still kind of grinding because I'm telling myself I can't relax until this particular thing is done.
mhm.
And it's I don't know if it's really if I think it's just kind of a lie because I'm like, well, shouldn't I just be able to relax like without having to get and they'll always like it'll always be waiting for you on Monday. Like,
Mhm.
can I just go ahead and tell myself like, okay, it's 8 p.m. on Friday or whatever. It's time to turn off. It's time to switch off.
Yeah, I think it's the easiest or easier when maybe a lot of your other colleagues are off. I think it's
Yeah.
harder when you take time off and you're the only one, which is why in the past couple of months, some companies have done like these COVID days, where like every single person, no matter where you are working in the world, because not everybody, obviously, not everybody at our companies celebrate the American Thanksgiving, and so not everybody gets that off. But these like COVID days
Yeah.
were these like single days where literally everybody takes off. Nobody, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. There are some people who still have to work, But
Right.
the vast majority of folks take the time off, and the likelihood of you getting an email is very, very low.
Yes.
But for example, I knew I could file my expenses yesterday because I knew everyone else outside of the US was still working. So,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah. Yeah, so I think that helps, the relaxation, but crossing stuff off your to-do list, like it is that kind of like pseudo high for like a second, and then
Hmm.
you're like, oh, but wait, I could add 3 or 5 more things to the
Things.
to-do list. And
Yeah, for
does it
sure.
ever get any shorter? Whew. Anyway,
Yes.
well,
Well,
back onto our day jobs.
hmm
What
well,
what do we have in store this week?
yeah. So first off, I want to say hi, welcome everybody to Surviving UX. This is the place for real talk about being a UX designer. So we want to congratulate you on making it through another week of UXing. Today, what we're going to do is answer a few questions from readers and then talk about hot, tricky work scenario topic and how to handle it. So first, a quick disclaimer. Our program does not disclose any confidential information about any company or employee. It's for entertainment purposes only. So let's kick it off.
Cool. All right. So our listener question today that we want to answer is from a UX designer, and they write, "What are some red flags that you might see at your job to know it's not the best one for growth for you?"
Awesome question. So red flags at work and knowing when to pay attention to those red flags or when you say, oh, that's just part of how things go in the biz. First thing that jumps to mind for me is a memory I have several years ago talking to a coworker about, growth. And this is specifically around like growth opportunities at a particular company. And they were like, you know what? I mean, I've been doing the same job for 5 years. I haven't gone anywhere. And so's been doing the same job for 3 years. And so's been doing the same job for 8 years.
Hmm.
And I remember at the time being like, uh-oh, like that doesn't sound good to me. That felt like a red flag in that moment because I was like, I kept thinking, well, if I work hard and I put in the time that
Hmm.
I'll move up.
Hmm.
And I see these people are working hard, they're here busting their butt and then delivering things. And if they're staying the same place year after year after year, is that what that's going to mean for me? And, there's a stability aspect to that. Like you get really good at doing your job, which is
Hmm.
appealing, I think. But at the same time, it did kind of frighten me a little bit. It kind of planted a seed
Yeah.
for me to like start looking around.
I think it's a universal rule, or it is the rule, and there are only exceptions to it, which is that in almost every case, you're going to progress more in this industry if you hop around, either for pay or title. Or I feel like I've heard way too many stories of that, of where that strategy and tactic works, and where, where the opposite, we're staying at one place for a long time, doesn't lead to quite as many of those types of, advancements in terms of both, like, salary and job title. And
Hmm.
it's kind of a bummer. I mean, I think it's a disservice to what we're supposed to be doing, because it takes a person a good amount of time to get really deep into the domain that of whatever they're trying to build. Not the domain of UX, but the domain of, whatever it is that you are building for, and the users that you are building for, to really
Hmm.
understand them, to really know them, and to like really be able to like work the system to be able to improve their experience. And that's not a 2 to 3 year job. That's, in my mind, that's a much longer job. So I think that the things that would tend to give us the kinds of advancement that I think a lot of people seek, especially early on in their career, are not are not really compatible with really how we ought to be, serving in this profession, which is a super bummer. But I do have some thoughts. I do have some thoughts on this, which is like, well, maybe that's not what growth means. I guess when I hear
Mhm.
this question, I think like, is growth to this person about salary and job title? And if it is, that's one conversation. But if growth is something else, or if it can be something else, maybe there's more wiggle room there. But I don't know.
Mhm.
Any thoughts you have on those topic
Yeah,
on that
actually, I think
line of
that's a
thinking?
really cool way of thinking about like what does growth mean to you? If you're thinking about like I'm just moving up the ladder, like I'm doing my job and I'm getting a better title and a better salary and I'm still doing my job, or is it like, hey, I'm stretching past my current like the edges of my abilities and like I'm doing things a little bit outside my comfort zone and like learning some new skills that I wouldn't learn otherwise, like, or I'm responsible for more things or more people or more projects. Like, is that the type
Mhm.
of growth that you're looking for? Like you're doing a lot of little projects and you want to be doing bigger projects. You're doing individual contributor work and you want to be running a team. Like,
Mhm.
what does that look like? And I think the best thing you can do when you're thinking about growth is like, researching sort of your own company, your own, coworkers of like, well, what other kind of roles are at this company that I could move into or help out with? Or, you know, are there like, roles in marketing design or are there roles in, UX writing or things like that? Or do you see PMs that are coming out of UX or taking on a lot of UX stuff or things like that? So, I mean, but in terms of like red flags, when do you
Yeah,
know
what
you're
are the
looking
what are
red
the red
flag?
flags?
I
No
mean,
matter what
I
growth
would
is for you,
say,
what are some
I
big big
would say a
signs?
lot of turnover. I mean, a lot of turnover is one thing where you see people come in, they kind of get a lay of the land, and then they're like, I'm out. They're there for 6 months, 8 months, and they don't really stick around long enough to have a big impact or to really learn the ropes. They just sort of get their feet wet and they think like this, they look around, this isn't for me. I'm moving on quickly. Like that's a red flag to me if you see that happening a lot. And then another one that comes to mind is just, like layoffs. I mean, if you're constantly getting round after round after round of layoff, like that's a pretty big red flag. I mean, I've been in that situation where people around me were getting cut constantly. It was very stressful. I felt like that was the red flag for me. I didn't want to wait for my number to get called, so I just tried to plan my next move as quickly as I could. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Toxic work culture is another thing I'm thinking that I've heard people talk about of like, oh, an impetus for moving. It's like, is your work difficult? Okay. But are the people good? Are there people you can learn from? Are there people you can trust? Or is it like super cutthroat or super bitchy or super political and you're just like, you just don't feel at ease in your own skin kind of a thing? Or you feel like people are just really, ganging up on you or you don't have anybody you can really turn to and you don't feel like
Mhm.
you can hang in there. I mean, a tough environment, like it's kind of hard. It's like there's a difference between a tough environment and a toxic environment.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking about like what can you handle, like what can you learn to live with versus like what is like truly toxic, like if you feel like you're having to go to HR, a lot, that's I feel like that's toxic. Like things you can't handle by yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And while I think maybe some of those distinctions are difficult and blurry and lots of gray area, the reverse I think is more obvious. Like maybe in the sense of like there are some green lights to see, like if the reverse is true, if you're feeling like really supported, by peers or by your boss, or and that kind of thing, but maybe there's other things that you feel like you're missing out on. Like to me, that's more of a green light, because you're just it's so rare to find those non-toxic work environments, I guess, or those 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 really tolerable ones.
mm-hmm.
And so like there's a part of me that's like, ooh, like like stick around for that, because you don't know you don't know when you're going to get it again, I guess. Or I don't know, maybe that's too much of a sacrifice, but
Yeah.
um to me it's kind of like, it's if you're working with good people, you feel comfortable and, and safe, and like you can, like you can tackle the work, and that you're being appreciated. Like,
Yes.
you're really not going to get anything, once like once you hit a certain, like, quality of life, like you're probably not going to get much more satisfaction than that,
Mm,
even if you go up, even if you have more responsibility,
very good
um
point.
and that kind of thing. But
Very
it's,
good point.
just one perspective. um shall we move on to
For sure.
the next
Yes.
hot topic here?
All right.
Yeah.
So this is our next hot topic. So this is about handling multiple requests. So in UX, you are often on the receiving end of asks from PMs, engineers, and whoever happens to be walking down the hall.
Mhm.
So Meg, have you ever been inundated with UX requests and you got overwhelmed? And if so, how did you handle that?
Yes. Like it's pretty common, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think there's some strategies that you can apply. A good one, I think, is looking at everything you've got and trying to make it visible first to yourself, because you not even realize how many things you're getting asked to do,
Mm-hmm.
and where those requests are coming from. Like, so, making some lists, and saying like, okay, this is what I've been asked to do this week. And and then go to somebody who can help you, either, a PM that you work with who is good at helping prioritization, or your boss who should be good at helping you do prioritization. um or maybe in a different case, it's an engineering manager who's managing the backlog, or a scrum master, or something like that. And be very frank and say like, I can't do all of these things. So what do you want me to focus on? Because all of these things are
Yeah.
not going to get done. I think the hardest part is when you really want to work on something. There's something you like, either either your little heart really wants to work on, or
Yeah.
or you feel like very obligated to, or maybe you're going to do it because you are trying to build reciprocity with somebody who asked you to
Yeah.
do it, who for whom, like, you may need a favor later. And
Right.
so there's all sorts of reasons why you might want to do something that's lower on that priority list. So I think that's a balancing act of like, when can you kind of squeeze some of those things in, versus when they might be good for you, or they might be good for the customer, and they might, something along those lines, versus like, when do you really need someone else that's external to say, yeah, you know what, you do have too much on your plate, and I see that, and I see what we can't do. um but
Right.
I don't know, sometimes these days I feel, or maybe, and by these days I mean like as I get more established, or I mean, it's not being established, it's just being not as much as new, not as much as new about this job these days. And like, whenever this happens again, sometimes, or because it happens all the time, I feel like I question, like, I still, even to this day, question like, ooh, am I just not able to handle as much as I could before? Or like, are
Mm,
these really as challenging as I think they are? Like, I do have some self-doubt about that. Which I like, that's tough, but I don't like, if somebody is really struggling with this and they are feeling overwhelmed, and it's real, and they're feeling it, and they're feeling the stress from it, like, make you know make a list, figure out
right.
if you can sort out the priority, and if you can't, go to somebody else who cares about who cares
Right.
about the productivity, and say, you got to help me figure out what I should work on first.
What's your maximum work in progress number? how many things do you feel like you can actually tackle at once versus like when is it just like a joke?
Good Lord. I mean, I feel like there's a number of things I can do at once as long as the domain is not switching.
Mm-hmm.
Once it starts to be like, we have this project with this PM on this topic and this subject, and then we have one that's wildly different, and you know, for like maybe four of those,
Mm,
then I'm just like, you
yeah, 4 is
like
that's high. That's
you've
high.
you've lost me.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. How about you? Do you have a
I'm
number?
just sort of like I'm at this point right now where I'm actually wrapping up a couple of projects and I'm finding it hard to let go a little bit. And
Mm.
I keep thinking of more things I can do on those things. Like I keep thinking like, well, what if we do this other thing? Or what about this other idea? Or what about this follow on? And my brain's still in that mode of like thinking about this project and thinking about this feature. And meanwhile, I have other things that need to be done.
Mhm,
And I'm
mhm.
not able to like turn myself away from the old stuff and focus on the new stuff and give it that time and
Mhm,
attention. And I'm seeing this in myself as like an issue. I'm like, shit,
mhm,
people are knocking on my door, they want stuff. I'm still thinking about these things that are, going out the door right now. And if they're good to go, if there's any loose ends. And but meanwhile, people are like, well, those things are done, right? Like
mhm.
it should be done. And they're right. Like it should be done. Like I should be able to
Mm.
say, okay, I'm done.
What is the definition of done?
What is the definition of done?
Like,
And the other thing is too, is like
how often have we heard that?
when you get requests about those things that are supposedly quote unquote done, so then you have those questions popping up, and then you have your new projects coming up that need to be, ramped up and warmed up and everything. So for me, I'm sort of looking at myself as like, am I too attached? Am I attached to these projects too much? Or can I be more efficient? Can I say,
Mhm,
okay, I'm going to spend, one more day on this, and then that's enough. And then I'll go ahead and surrender and like let it loose and then start putting my attention on this other thing. So I think for me, like, and that feeling of being inundated with requests, I I'm very much like a process person, and I one-off requests, I'm like, there's only so much I can do, unless something is like a funded project. If there's a small thing here, a small thing there, I mean, I can sit down and design something really fast, but is there going to be somebody to build it?
hmm,
So,
mhm,
because that's fast. You're like, oh, let's change this one little thing around. It's sure, let's change it all day long. But if there's not going to be that funding in that prioritization, from the whole team agreeing to do
mhm.
it, then it's sort of a waste of time. It just needs to go in the backlog. And at that point, so
Yeah, I love that they want us to work on backlog stuff, to just have it ready, just have it ready.
yeah,
Like, it's like, no, like, I'm gonna like, there's only so much capacity for engineering, there's only so much capacity for UX. Like,
yeah.
it's not as if we just
Well,
work
and
on
that's the thing,
everything
the
all the time.
ratios, there's always engineering coming and going, right? Like, but it's rare that you have like an army of designers at the ready to do
Mhm,
stuff. And so it's like, well, when you're resource constrained in terms of design, you want to make sure you're putting those cycles to use in the right place and not,
mhm,
you know, um, the worst thing you can do with your designer is put them on projects that aren't going to get built, because
mhm.
that's just a giant waste of everybody's time.
Yeah,
So
but they
it's like,
sometimes they
yeah,
somehow seem to like doing that. Not really sure
right.
why.
People want the vision. They want the vision because they want to try to sell something and they can't sell it unless they have something to look at. Once you have something
Mhm,
to look at, then it's pretty much like it's really easy, I think, to get it into everybody's mind as like a possibility. But
yeah,
until you're looking at it, it's just a dream. So I
yeah.
don't know. But in terms of like one thing that kind of comes to mind, I don't feel like I'm a master at this by any stretch of the imagination, but I have worked with other designers who have like an intake process. So they make people cut tickets for design work, and the tickets
Mhm,
have like a structure, templates and stuff like that. And I've never done this myself. I feel like I don't know if it's necessary unless you're getting like like you're getting requests from people who then just disappear. and you're sort of left holding the bag, and like they're not giving you what you need to like actually flesh everything out, then I can kind of see doing something like that where it's really, really structured. But I kind of feel like, well, what if you have like a dedicated person who you're working with and they're coming to you and they're like, hey, we're kicking this off, like let's get this started, and you're like, all right, let's do it. Then I don't really feel like I need to make them sit down and write a ticket, but we could have like a meeting or something about it. But if
I
I
like,
get, an email and then I'm like, oh, what do I do with this?
yeah, I like to have there be a little bit of a barrier to entry, like to enter my
Hmm.
backlog, like to enter my
Yeah.
my list of to-dos. Like I like it to be a little bit difficult. I like it to be a little bit
Hmm.
more difficult than like sending me a message or
An email.
emailing me. Like,
Just here's a
yeah,
chat. Here's a thought.
yeah,
Here's a thought. Okay, see you later. Like, okay.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
then you make then like is it because then you can start to determine whether it's a fleeting thought that they had, as a dream,
Hmm. Yeah. Right.
or whether they were really serious about you working on it in exchange for something else they probably also asked you to do last week. Um,
Right.
yeah. All right. Well, we should move on to our last topic of the day.
Yes. Okay. So our last question for today is friendly colleagues. So friendly colleagues. So our listener writes, I have a coworker who I really enjoy working with, but from time to time, he makes some subtle advances or says things that feel a little too friendly. How do I set a professional boundary but still work with this colleague?
Hmm. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, this is a really tough one, because I think we've all been through our, or most of us have been through
Yeah.
maybe multiple, sexual harassment trainings at work, and like we know a lot of about the party line, and we know what HR uh, how HR needs to act to make sure the company is not like at risk of any lawsuits. Which, and I choose
Yeah.
those words carefully. That's exactly what they're there for. I, and so I think but that said, is a lot can go on that isn't really kind of at that level or needing to be addressed, in that realm. That
Right.
still is kind of like where where exactly like is how can I set a professional boundary? And one thing comes to mind for me. I do feel really quite lucky that this kind of discomfort hasn't happened to me a lot, because I know it has, it happens quite a bit for some women, and some men too. And it's something that they have to deal with, on a much more regular basis than I do.
Yeah.
One kind of thing that I reflect on this is, you know, I when I was in a situation like this, like, I felt like I had a moment of, maybe not even a moment, but this like vulnerability. Like I exposed some vulnerability, and that kind of opened the gates to kind of like a situation I was later not comfortable with, and then I felt
Mm,
like, ooh, that was because I asked for support, because I put myself out, because
yeah.
I put myself in that situation,
Yeah.
where, and so, and then you feel a little bit like, well, there's nothing I really can do, because I was the one who kind of said at one point, like, oh, we're not, we're more, like, we maybe I broke down that professional boundary. So I guess
Mm,
what I'm trying to say from my one experience that I still look back on, and think about what I could have done differently, is I do feel a little bit like, I shouldn't have to put that on myself, like, just because you need support, or you need, something, or you feel like a colleague is the right person to share, something that's going on with you, or that kind of a thing. Doesn't mean that then later, you know, it's okay to be overly friendly or to be you know, to make you uncomfortable in the workplace.
Right.
And so I kind of feel like I wish I had done something differently about it. But really, I mean, if the only thing I did do was I just ignored the situation and hoped it would go away. And I'm not
Uh-huh.
saying that's what anybody should do. In fact, I think that's
Yeah.
probably not what people should do. But
Right.
I guess I'm sharing this as like, you know, a real life, like I didn't know what to do, and that's what I
Yeah.
did. How about you?
Well, I think of so many. I've literally had this happen, I think at every single job I've ever had. I mean, I can think of somebody who kind of singled me out in some way and wanted to be, more than friends. And it wasn't like intense, like they wanted to date or anything necessarily, but just like they kind of let their walls down,
Mhm.
maybe my walls were down a little bit. And the next thing I know, I'm going out to lunch with somebody and having drinks, and I'm sitting there thinking, how did I get myself into this? I don't want this to go any further where somebody's
Mhm.
thinking that we're on a date. I don't want to be on a date with my coworker. So I've kind of learned to be really careful, especially around male colleagues, because I mean, I've definitely had it happen with female colleagues too, but it happens more often with the males. And uh, it really does surprise me, I think, how people who you think in their life, they're maybe happily married with kids, and they're still willing to try to cross that boundary with you. And you're like, wow, no, 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 no. And
Mm.
you just do have to be really careful. And I think the thing that I try to do is when the communication starts to get outside of the work conversation, so talking about meals or talking about going or coming to work or talking about the weekend or whatever, um, I try to shut those types of conversations down. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to get into, hey, let's meet up, or hey, let's get
Mhm.
drinks, or hey, let's
Mhm.
you and I grab lunch, more than just like we're sitting in a cafeteria with trays, or something like that. Like, but
Yeah.
like you and I go out to a restaurant, like that kind of thing. No, I've had coworkers tell me their stories about how they got like cards from people or flowers or gifts, and they're like, uh-oh, they don't want to reciprocate. Now what? They're on the same team,
Mhm.
and the person's like, somebody's seeking out a relationship, and then that's the thing, is like they have to shut it down, and then it gets uncomfortable, and then that person feels uncomfortable, and now what? You're stuck working together with somebody, and it feels super awkward, like you've rejected a date. um I would say, like, if this stuff still happens, it seems like I feel like I'm too old for it, but it still happens. And I think the best thing to do is try to like, don't give out those signals, if at all possible. Try to not give out any signals that you're there for anything more than just getting the job done. And um, I think it's okay to be friendly, but then if you feel like somebody's too friendly, I think it's okay to turn off your friendly
Mhm.
and be a little bit more buttoned up, a little bit more business-like, so that they really don't feel like they're um they're getting those signals back from you, that like you want to keep smiling at them or keep laughing with them or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, just turn off the smiles and turn off the laughs, and
Yeah.
just
It
start being
sounds
more transactional.
yeah, it sounds like in both of our cases, you know, we were pretty subtle about how we handled things, and like you know, hopefully over time, like hoped that the other party kind of like got the message of like, you know, like this is yeah, this is going to be more transactional in nature. This is going to be more professional in nature. And
Yeah.
I guess what it makes me wonder, and what it leaves me with is like what does a world look like where we can be more direct, we can be more like it's okay to be more direct. We don't worry about, you know, what might be lost or what you know, what the team dynamics might be if we were. And I guess my last thing that I'll add to this before we wrap up is like to anybody who's listening to this, who, has these is in a situation similar to this, um, and you're feeling like it is too much, that it is certainly, your right to go seek additional support from HR, or from your boss, or from
Oh, yeah.
another colleague. And so, absolutely feel empowered to do so.
Yeah.
But
Document it.
document it.
Write it down.
Yeah.
Write it
And
down. Even small comments, I would say write them down, and then tell somebody. Tell somebody that you feel safe telling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and on the other side of things, like, we get it. We know it's tough to be more direct, and and certainly in my case, like, I wasn't, and I wonder, I'll continue to wonder if that was the right thing to do.
Oof, rough.
So,
All right, guys. Well, that is our show for today. Please send us your UX career questions and struggles. We want to hear about the shit show that you're surviving. We will always keep it anonymous and confidential. Email us at survivingux@gmail.com.
thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Surviving UX is edited by me, Meg Kramer. Our theme music is, among other things, the on-hold music for Cisco phones. It is called Opus Number 1 by Tim Carlton and Derek Deal. Thanks to my co-host, Jessamine Edwards, and thanks to you for listening, and we hope that you hang in there until next time.